so I won't go into too much detail now. But I will move on to how we scored in 4.1, which is measurement and analysis. Definitely can appreciate the Baldrige examiners not holding anything back and not trying to make us feel better about ourselves. But this was true. We just did not have a fully deployed systematic approach towards analysis. We did some pretty organized tracking, but we didn't really have a systematic approach to gathering the enormous amounts of data that we possess as an organization and really turning it into actionable information. We frequently knew how we were performing, but we did not have a good system to determine why we were performing that way. And if we were taking action, we didn't have a good way of evaluating the results of whatever action was taken. So I'm going to start our story around then, shortly before we submitted our Baldrige application back in 2014. So we had started with a really simple approach and had made a lot of progress, especially for an organization of our size at the time, at tying measurements to process, identifying and using relevant comparative data, and making our performance to target visible on a regular basis. Process owners were populating Excel dashboards that you can see there on the screen on a monthly basis with actual performance and forecasts of a lot of our key in-process measures, which were aligned with our strategic goals of employee engagement, member health, and financial sustainability. Year-to-date indicators at the top were used to quickly identify where we were succeeding or where we needed to improve. Our color-coded monthly results helped us find where one area of the organization may have either found a best practice by consistently performing 20% above goal, or where we might need immediate attention by performing more than 20% below goal. The not so good at this approach was that while we had a dedicated marketing analyst who is measuring our effectiveness at top of the funnel efforts, and then a finance analyst who is measuring our risk, profitability, portfolio size, and dozens of other outcome measures, we had no one dedicated to measuring all the activities that happened in between. All of those dashboards were populated mostly using canned vendor reporting, which got us a long ways, but the reporting solutions from these vendors are typically not very customizable and are often lacking on data definitions and report documentation, meaning we were always 100% sure what exactly that data meant. This method also did not lend itself easily to drill down analysis. Once we were able to actually identify where we weren't achieving good process results, it was extremely difficult to segment those results. It often required pulling entirely new reports and trying to prepare the spreadsheets, if it was even possible at all. And then the update process was highly manual, prone to errors, a huge task to knowledge transfer. And then the timing of the updates were highly variable, depending, if people were on vacation or what their work schedules were. So one of the symptoms of this approach was a lack of common understanding of some of our most important metrics. In a 2014 monthly consumer lending production meeting, we were having a discussion about why we weren't hitting our consumer lending production targets. And our head of consumer lending at the time said in the meeting that our pull-through rate, which is our percentage of loan applications that we can turn into funded loans, was at 60%, which was a pretty solid result, indicating that the issue was top of funnel. We were not getting enough loan applications into the pipeline. And then shortly after that, the person in charge of our outbound lending efforts then said that she had calculated our pull-through rate at 40%, meaning that we had issues in underwriting and loan processing, and it was not application volume. No one knew for sure where their figures came from, let alone which one was correct. So the team was unable to decide on any course of corrective action, and the meeting just adjourned for another month. Meetings ending with that type of result led to a big cycle of learning for the organization. Critical in-process metric reporting had to be centralized with a better understanding and documentation of business and metric definitions. We had to be able to speak a common language to reduce confusion during discussions in order to accelerate our decision-making velocity. Initially, those marketing and finance analysts started a cross-functional group called BITE, which was short for Business Intelligence Team, but it quickly became evident that they would not be able to dedicate the proper amount of time to this endeavor and still perform their essential job functions. So in 2014, the organization hired a business intelligence analyst dedicated to increasing the volume, efficiency, and effectiveness of in-process reporting. Having a dedicated analyst allowed that person the time to shadow the people performing these processes, to understand how they were working and why. Once this person had an in-depth understanding of a process and all system workflows, They were able to use raw data extracts from those source systems to gain a more complete understanding of the data, and then could build reporting that gave process owners the ability to easily segment their results across all relevant dimensions, enabling easier drill down analysis. This BI analyst, who was paired with a business process management analyst, worked with process owners on our 5-step BPM methodology process to avoid what we called infotainment. We wanted to understand what we were measuring and why, taking a more disciplined approach to performance measurement instead of creating reporting for the sake of reporting. Usage of the SIPOC tool ensured that we were not measuring chaos, that our measurements were actually meaningful, and our results compared to targets and benchmarks with appropriate segmentation could be made actionable. This BPM methodology requires process owners to state requirements up front so we can be clear about necessary inputs and outputs, as well as customer requirements, in order to effectively monitor all aspects of a process. Again, you'll hear much more about this, our BPM methodology and the SIPOC tool from Emily and Carrie in our Category 6 session this afternoon, if you are interested. Centralizing this reporting function and using raw data instead of vendor reporting to build out self-serve analytics sped up our performance measurement process by getting the data into the hands of the people who could take action. These analytics allowed process owners to view results ahead of time so they could immediately dive into a root cause analysis using the drill down functionality highlighted in red, or go straight to corrective action. Instead of recurring meetings being used to review results and likely argue about where the process breakdowns might be, these meetings can now be used to align on cross-functional action plans. As these meetings became more effective and leaders began to see the value of data-informed decision-making, they started to want more analysis with increasing complexity and, of course, at an increased frequency. We had found ourselves with our BI analysts pulling raw data from 11 different source systems on a monthly basis just to compile enterprise reporting, which did not allow a lot of time for much else. So the effectiveness of this work demonstrated the value of enterprise reporting and analysis and led to a strategic initiative in 2016 to make data analytics a competitive advantage and move the organization from step 2 to step 3 of the Gartner data analytics maturity model. This meant shifting our focus from what we call rear view mirror analytics to predicting what will happen in the future. Our stated objective was to provide the organization access to critical information, improved analysis of performance, and the ability to proactively predict our members' needs. This level of buy-in from our board of directors and senior leadership gave us the resources to invest in better tools and technology, as well as developers and analysts dedicated to this objective. So fast forward to today, we now have a full enterprise BI team serving as a center of excellence for the organization, which is responsible for maintaining our BI platform, creating a single source of truth for key organizational performance metrics, and using data to understand our members' needs better than our competitors. On the analyst team, each analyst is embedded within each of our value streams, and they are each partnered closely with a BPM analyst, business process management analyst, tasked with understanding underlying processes in depth in order to use data and analytics to support value stream goals. Having an analyst assigned to a specific value stream allows each of them to gain day-to-day business acumen as well as source system expertise, giving them the knowledge and ability to be proactive in meeting each team's needs and finding opportunities for improvement, rather than being order takers for reporting requests from the business. This innovative approach of having analysts embedded throughout the organization while still maintaining a center of excellence has been a key differentiator for Elevations and the source of much of our success. The engineering team, which consists of 3 BI developers and a BI architect, support the analysts, providing sustainability, efficiency, improved governance, and increased agility. They report directly to the VP of Applications Engineering in our IT department in order to align with existing ITIL processes, but they maintain a matrixed reporting structure with the director of BI as they work out of a shared backlog that directly aligns with the business needs identified by the analyst team. The engineering team manages the ingestion of over 50 data sources into our centralized data warehouse at intervals ranging from quarterly to hourly. Any data integrations between systems that use the data warehouse as a hub, the ongoing maintenance of our most important database objects, and is responsible for engineering a sustainable, scalable, and affordable infrastructure to meet the organization's growing analytical needs. This team manages over 100 analytics, most of which are refreshed on a nightly basis, that are available to the entire workforce via our reporting portal we call the Compass, which is built on Microsoft's Power BI service. Our deployment of this technology allows users to drill through from high-level year-to-date KPIs versus budget, all the way down to daily reporting on individual contributor performance across many different segments. To aid in our analysis and provide necessary context to our performance, we systematically identify and select comparative data based on 3 criteria. Ideally, we'd like to compare ourselves to our primary in-market competition, which are the big banks, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Chase, institutions like that. However, due to the small amount of market-specific sharing these financial institutions do, we're mostly limited to their regulatory reporting data and public real estate sales data. Our second choice is to compare ourselves with credit unions of similar asset size or business model. Because credit unions are known for their willingness to share performance data, these are our primary comparative data sources. We fill out multiple benchmarking surveys annually and participate in credit union service organizations to get workforce productivity data, product profitability and penetration, demographic segmentation of our product performance, member service benchmarks, among many, many, many other metrics. And then when neither of those 2 are available, we really strive to compare ourselves to other best practice organizations if they're outside of our industry. So for example, Gartner for technology comparisons and Gallup for employee engagement benchmarking. The same key factors that have spurred a lot of our success are the same factors that allow us a high degree of measurement agility. They are the availability of our data in our centralized data warehouse, typically loaded nightly, our BI analyst integration inside of our operational rhythm and their source system expertise, the BI engineering team that's able to rapidly automate the movement, ingestion, and transformation of newly identified data sources, a flexible presentation layer, and our agile methodology. So a great example of this came in March of 2020. As the COVID pandemic hit in full force, Elevations had to quickly deploy brand new processes to help our members in need, while putting adequate monitoring in place to measure our financial risk over time to satisfy our regulatory agencies. Our BI analysts and developers were able to team up with business line leaders at BPM analyst and IT to design and to deploy a process with enabling technology that allowed us to quickly handle a large volume of consumer loan deferments with daily monitoring as deferments were either extended or payments were made to take loans out of that deferment status. Most of the required data was already available to us on a nightly basis, which assisted in building out and testing the process, while our developers were able to ingest any new data sources and integrate them into the reporting. We received consistent praise from regulators for our ability to assess our portfolio risk on an ongoing basis related to specific pandemic efforts, something really most other financial institutions, especially our size, were unable to do. And then all of this work, unfortunately, as well as some other past projects, became very important again earlier this year when disaster struck almost literally in our backyard as our support office was evacuated due to this. The Marshall wildfire started on December 30th, and it burned over 6,000 acres, including 1,000 homes valued at more than $500 million. Once this happened, within a couple of days, we were able to download the wildfire map from the county and turn that into a database object, and then use that to identify all of our members that live within the burn zone and begin outreach to affected members. And then simultaneously, we were able to help out our risk management team understand the magnitude of the risk this devastation posed to our lending portfolios, while being able to grant loan forbearance again to our members upon request. On to performance analysis and review, which is how we support the organization and make it better. So Maura referred to this earlier. Elevation's operational rhythm, which is a set of recurring meetings we use to make sure the right people are getting the right information to make the right decisions, is fed by our performance measurement system. As I mentioned before, having analysts embedded into these forums via the value streams ensures that selected measures are effective. And then when they are not, we are able to quickly adjust them. The self-serve nature of our analytics allows process owners to identify issues essentially in real time, drill down to find root cause, and allow us to achieve the full cycle of turning data into information, into actionable insights, into decisions, and finally action, and then repeat that cycle to ensure our actions had the intended consequences. The BI team's findings and the action plans that result being discussed in these operational rhythms increases our alignment with the knowledge management team so they can codify and share best practices across the organization. When drill down in process analytics aren't adequate in determining appropriate next steps, organizational analysts will conduct any sort of deep dive analysis, including competitive, cause and effect, RFM, regression, among many others. Requests for this sort of analysis from the BI team, along with additional in-process measure reporting, are submitted to the team and vetted using the intake request process, at which time they are put into the full backlog of work. The work is then completed and managed through the create analytics and manage analytics processes. These processes are deployed through agile methodology with backlog prioritization done through a cross-functional effort by leaders of BI, marketing, finance, and digital to ensure the highest value work is being prioritized and completed. So with the level of measurement agility we find so important and the speed with which the team is able to produce new insights, documentation becomes increasingly important so we can maintain accuracy. As the volume and complexity of our work has increased over time, as well as the size of the team, we've went through several cycles of learning on how to manage the data, business, and metric definitions. An important aspect of our create and manage analytics processes is the documentation of our code and how that translates to these definitions. We went from basic Excel lists to SharePoint lists to an online data catalog, and are now working on deploying a more automated solution that can scan all of our database objects to improve the ease with which we classify the sensitivity of our data, make our data lineage visible, and manage our definitions. This tool will house all of our most important documentation and will be made available to the organization as they navigate our reporting and require more information on what certain terms or metrics mean. Along with adequate documentation, another important aspect of the accuracy of our analytics is our data quality, which we ensure through people, process, and technology. So prior to our business intelligence efforts, it wasn't always readily apparent when data quality issues existed, and there wasn't a lot of thought put into the processes around our data input. Early on, organizational analysts would spend hours every month performing data cleansing to ensure accurate month-end reporting despite our data quality issues. As we began visualizing large volumes of data and refreshing reports daily, we would frequently hear how our reporting was wrong. We treated this feedback as opportunities to teach people about the value of clean, accurate data and helped identify areas where we could either use technology to enforce complete, accurate data, where we might need improved process to ensure quality, or where we might just have some people or training issues. When we first started reporting on the volume and service quality of how our operations department was handling service events, we found absolutely horrible results. Dozens and dozens of events that were well past service level agreements. A deep dive into that data, though, found that the bulk of those were resolved in a timely manner, but the event just wasn't properly documented and closed out in the source system. A one-time manual cleanup of open, stale service events and training on how to properly close out these events has led to really valuable reporting where leaders know the volumes of work they're completing at any given time and whether they're having or will have any service quality issues. Or, as in this example, when operations management hears a story from our front lines of a service event taking too long to complete, which is represented by the red dot in this chart, they can identify if it was a one-time anomaly or a systemic issue. So with this visual, you can clearly see that not only was this instance an anomaly, we actually stay within our 12-hour service level agreement over 99% of the time. And in fact, our median turn time is 30 minutes. Additionally, individual contributors can view their own performance daily so they know whether they're meeting or exceeding expectations prior to manager check-ins. An example of where we use technology to create quality data was when we wanted to understand the turn times we were seeing in the consumer lending value stream and couldn't always find actionable insights in the data as the workflows did not enable the sort of data we needed. The BI team worked with the head of consumer lending and an IT systems analyst to configure queues into the lending workflow that allowed us to isolate the parts of the workflow that were totally controllable by us from other times when we might be waiting on an answer from a member. We were then able to visualize this data to identify opportunities to drive down those turn times, ensure that we were minimizing variance where we could, and proactively identify service level issues instead of waiting for bad feedback from a member. Our success in performance measurement and analysis created a culture of data-informed decision-making, which drove the organization to view our data as a true organizational asset. The recognition of the importance of our data led to the formation of a data governance committee in 2019, which marked Elevation's advancement into the level 3 proactive step on the Gartner data governance maturity model. Any decisions that affect the accuracy, reliability, quality, security, or accessibility of important organizational data runs through this cross-functional decision-making body. Since the formation of this committee, Elevations has taken on a formal, large-scale data cleanup effort of our core member data, along with the implementation of technology, to ensure ongoing quality in order to help us achieve our vision of amazing experiences raving fans. So before we move on to knowledge management, I want to give you a sense of our approach to innovation at Elevations. Opportunities for innovation are identified in many ways, including outcomes from the review of our analytics and operational rhythm forums, evaluation of processes for continuous improvements, and directly from our employees using an innovation portal. The portal is a collaborative forum where ideas gain visibility, engagement, and traction. Our innovation program manager supports their development through the idea lifecycle, which may include research, experimentation, further collaboration, or direction through the continuous improvement, bite intake, or portfolio intake processes. Sometimes ideas result in the creation of sharing of organizational knowledge, which is a great segue into our next topic of knowledge process management. And I am certainly not doing our innovation program enough justice on this one slide. So please all check out Alicia's deep dive on innovation in our final set of sessions today. So to wrap up, we'll go to our most recent Baldrige feedback report. Our investments over the past 8 years in turning data and analytics into a competitive advantage, as well as our effective approach and deployment, helped us take what had been a key weakness and turn it into one of our key strengths in our most recent feedback report. And with that, I will pass it over to Maura to tell you all about our knowledge process management.
Thank you so much, Tom. I'm sure that generated quite a few questions. So we're going to continue the presentation through knowledge process management. But if you want to, feel free to chat your question or save it until the very end, and we'll just ask you to raise your hand and unmute yourself to ask the question. So I'm Maura. I'm back again to talk about knowledge management and organizational learning. We're going to start first with the knowledge management process. So as data, the measurement and analysis reaches that level that Tom demonstrated in our case study, it becomes really helpful information for the organization, right? By providing the facts and the figures that our leaders can rely on and react to. So information's great, but for information to actually become knowledge for all the different audiences, and we have audiences from tellers to managers to the executives, we have to have a systematic way of creating and identifying it, collecting it into these right packages, reviewing it for consistency, sharing it then with all the right audiences, and then providing access to it through both push and pull mechanisms. So knowledge management at Elevations has gone through a number of iterations, and we're still evolving. We look at knowledge through various lenses. We have people, process, technology, and content lenses. But we run it through this consistent approach of creating and identifying knowledge all the way through the use of that knowledge. So the table on the right-hand side of this particular slide has a bit more context in it. I'm not going to go through it in this presentation, but I wanted to include it as more of a takeaway for you to see how each one of the actions within the KM process wheel actually works. We also have a full suite of enterprise-wide tools that we use. These are the ones that provide instant access for all of our employees to experts and to our knowledge assets to help solve their needs in the moment that they have them. So we use Office 365 suite of tools, including both Teams and SharePoint sites for those collaboration needs. And in the last year, 18 months or so, actually, we've lifted our reference desk, which used to be our knowledge management platform. We called it the reference desk. we lifted that reference desk of all of our processes and procedures up to SharePoint Online to house all these knowledge assets. So this SharePoint Online allows us to have a better search functionality with some bookmarking and some alerts, and really give people the confidence in our organization that this is their source of truth. This is the source of truth for all of our procedures and our knowledge assets that we have in the organization. So let's first talk about that foundation of our knowledge management practice, because it's all built on a really solid foundation. This enterprise process map, which I introduced at the very beginning of this category presentation, this is kind of a model of our organization. It shows how all of these processes fit together to meet the goals of the business. It's shown in detail here so that you can see how it forms the architecture of our knowledge management practice. The map here ensures a unified common taxonomy for knowledge management. Now, taxonomy is not a word that you use or hear every day, but you can think of this taxonomy as our Dewey Decimal System. It's our library of knowledge assets. And so the more modern version, if you don't go to the library and use the Dewey Decimal System today, is that that system of hashtagging documents and photos and videos for easy searchability. That's what this enterprise process map does for us. Now, currently, the enterprise process map presents our leadership processes, like those management processes which define our approach to our work, like our strategic planning process. It identifies our or represents our value stream processes, so how we design and sell and deliver our services and products, and our enabling processes. So those critical support processes which help us deliver value to our members. These internal work processes, they fit into this larger system, which is now shown on the screen. These are our inputs and the outputs. The inputs come by way of regulatory requirements, maybe our general business environment, maybe it's feedback from our members or from our staff. And then this taxonomy of our internal work processes then allows us to put some rigor around the governance of the knowledge assets that are associated with this by category and by category owner. So this overarching taxonomy allowed us to segment what we do into processes and procedures that then form the basis of our knowledge assets. So let's take a look at what we have. The summit, which is what we call our knowledge base, it's created and housed in SharePoint Online and provides us with a source of truth. It has search functionality, filtering, bookmarking, alerts to help individuals get to their most frequently used content. And our knowledge base contains all of this. It contains our board policies, our standards, our processes, which we actually create those processes in a system called BlueWorks Live, but they're also in the summit. We house our procedures and all of our other knowledge assets, which tend to be our job aids and our handbooks and our frequently asked questions. So our procedures, those are our standardized, documented set of activities for carrying out the process. These are they answer the question, how to do it. How do we do certain things? We have hundreds of procedures that are housed in the summit. All of these procedures have expiration dates, and they're generally a year out, so at least they get reviewed and updated that often. The system sends a message out to the owner of those documents, alerting them that it's time for a review. The knowledge assets, we then take those procedures and we chunk them down into information that can be bite-sized, right? These bite-sized tools provide frequently asked questions, they provide job aids, videos, articles that our employees need to access in order to do their jobs. These are the tools that we use in training, the skills necessary to perform all the different roles in the organization. And these knowledge assets are also regularly reviewed and updated because they're, I want to say, linked through the enterprise process map taxonomy to those processes and procedures. So as the processes and procedures change, we know to change all those bite-sized knowledge assets. So you might be asking yourself, who manages all of this? Let's take a look at our roles that support and drive our knowledge management practice. Right now, we have 2 full-time dedicated roles in knowledge management. The first is our knowledge and change practice leader. She happens to be on this call right now. And the other is our knowledge base administrator. He also happens to be on this call right now. The combination of these 2 roles provide the strategic planning, the oversight, the administrative duties of this practice. They also take a very consultative approach to supporting the documenting of our knowledge so that it can be useful in the flow of work for the end users. Additionally, our learning and development team have a couple of instructional designers and content developers that help to create some of those knowledge assets, those bite-sized learning assets for the organization. And many times these are one and the same. The knowledge assets are the learning assets for the organization. So a good knowledge asset actually deconstructs an end-to-end process or a procedure into these bite-sized bits of knowledge that can be immediately applied or answer an individual's needs. But this small team can't do it alone. So we have created an army of documentation specialists throughout the organization. We call them our special forces. The special forces that we've identified sit in each department or team. They share the duties of creating and revising procedures. They're also the ones that tend to recommend when a process can be improved. This team of people, this whole team of people that are on this slide are well coordinated with our special forces process specialists and our enterprise transformation group teams as well. So we use this whole team. How do we go about now sharing our best practices in the organization? I'm going to go back to a graphic that you've seen before. This is our operational rhythm. So achieving this high level of organizational performance requires a well-executed approach to both organizational and personal learning and sharing knowledge through systematic processes. So we have what we call operational rhythm meetings and regular collaboration meetings that I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation. The learning and development team and our knowledge management team are present in our quarterly business planning meetings, our value stream meetings, our team meetings, the staff meetings, connect the business meetings. We have all sorts of meetings that bring together these right people. We also have monthly collaboration meetings with quite a few departments in the organization, like retail operations, retail leadership, our mortgage leadership, to help understand the needs and support the implementations of projects and refresher trainings. So just as Tom said, his BI analysts are part of those teams, so are our learning and development professionals, so are our knowledge management professionals. So we meet with all sorts of different people. We meet with the compliance team, IT, our business process management teams, to really help ensure alignment and support those change efforts throughout the organization. All these multiple collaboration points, they serve to help surface, share, and update best practices, which in turn ensures that our knowledge base of all those knowledge assets remains the source of truth for the organization. And because of this continuous process of updating and sharing best practices, we really truly have become a learning organization. And organizational learning is such a huge topic to us because it includes both the continuous improvement of our existing approaches and significant changes or the innovations that happen throughout our organization. And it leads to new goals, new approaches. Learning needs to be, and truly is, embedded in the way our organization operates. It means that it's part of our daily work. I mean, we run regular training events on new topics, new regulations, new procedures, changes to existing ways of working. We also keep our knowledge assets up to date so that knowledge can be gained in the flow of work. It's practiced at a personal level, at a work unit level, and at organizational levels. Like we teach like audiences together for the job skills related to training. We provide a comprehensive orientation program and on-the-job training plans. We introduce comprehensive leadership development program to help multiply that effect in the organization and really build on that culture of learning that we have. And it really results in solving problems at their source, their root cause. When something doesn't work in the organization, our workforce is empowered to raise it up and discover possible solutions after determining the root cause. We're also focused on building and sharing knowledge throughout the organization. We created communities of practice for like roles or for project teams so that they can peer-to-peer learn from each other. And then finally, learning. Learning's driven by opportunities that affect significant, meaningful changes to innovate. This is how our overall process relates to the ADLI model, if you've heard of that, the ADLI model. We're constantly looking at our approach at a micro and a macro level. We ensure that we're deploying it as it was designed. We learn about it through evaluation of our metrics and analytics, and then we go through these regular cycles of improvement. We integrate all of these pieces together into a fully operating interconnected unit. So as you heard in the previous slide, we're connected through so many avenues of the organization. We are a learning organization. As such, we're always looking at our approach. We're deploying changes, learning, and integrating our updates into the organization. There are constant training opportunities and therefore some of the best organizational learning around. So I'm going to end there. We are honored to be able to share our journey with you. And we want to open it up to questions now. We've got like 42 of you guys on the presentation right now. Tom and myself are open to answer any of your questions that might have come up through our presentation. You're welcome to unmute yourself and ask the question, or you can chat it in and we'll take care of answering it for you there.
Hi, this is Glenn. I'm in Sheridan, Wyoming. How are you?
Good, thanks, Glenn.
So I'm an IT manager. We are a small community of just under 20,000 people. And we've always run our municipality on pretty lean budgets. I'm interested in being able to take back to my superiors. How many employees total do you have in your credit union, across how many branches, and what is your IT staffing number?
Good questions. Tom, you might want to bring up the data on our workforce. We have 600 people on staff within our organization. We have one larger building of, we call it our base camp, which has about 400 of our staff in it.
Okay.
We have our, what do we have? 14 branches.
Okay.
14 branch locations, and those are our retail staff, right? Those are the people who are face-to-face with our members on a daily basis. Our IT team, Tom, do you have that data? I can guesstimate.
Yeah, and I just need a rough.
Yeah.
Let's see, we peaked around 57 a few months ago. It's hard to tell. I don't know for sure how many we'd have if we were fully staffed, because we're not ever fully staffed, but roughly 60.
Okay, no, that's great. I mean, I don't need, precise numbers. I'm not, analyzing your company on that level. I need to be able to take back with expectations of what you have presented, what it might take for an organization of our size to be able to, incorporate this type of dynamic system into our processes. So, both to sort of manage expectations and also paint a path for where we think we need to go. You know, how much can we launch now versus where we can be, say, 12 months, 24 months out.
Yeah, that's especially from a BI perspective. You know, I mentioned starting real small. We had a BI team of 1 for a couple of years, you know, and supplemented. We supplemented that a little bit, you know, with some paid contractor work or consultants to do some of the complex stuff that we couldn't do. And then, yeah, over time, you know, as you're able to really show the value, it turns into an obvious ROI on expanding the team and those capabilities.
Yeah.
And if I could go back, did you say you had 400 or 600 total employees?
600.
600. Thank you very much. I may have another question a little bit later, but I will stop there.
Thanks, Glenn. We have a couple hands raised. I'm going to go to Carrie Stacy, then Kirk, and then we'll go to the question that's been chatted in.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for taking my question. One of the things that I think at the credit union I work at is where we struggle a little bit is that it's in governance. So we've got policies, we've got procedures, we're putting stuff in BlueWorks, we're putting stuff in SharePoint. How have you overcome kind of that integration perspective with the Office 365 and not creating roles that are very manual, but how did you address connecting stuff to where we don't have to hire a lot of people to continually to move stuff around to make sure it's the source of truth?
We are continuously battling that, Carrie. I think all of us are not information poor, but that causes us some difficulties in really trying to manage and govern what is the exact source of truth. So we have lots of data. There are teams that share their stuff over in Teams. They have their individual SharePoint sites. What we've been trying to do is capture the one source of truth, which is governed and has an expiration date on it or a review date on it. And so we're even working with one of the departments who had information in like 6 different places, and they had no idea which ones had the right information. We're working to clean up some of that stuff because it can get out of control with all of the systems and applications that we could be using. And so the reliance on our enterprise process map with our taxonomy allows us to tag the documents that are actually the source of truth and give them the governance that they deserve. So I don't know if that actually helps you in answering that particular question, but we will always be battling it, right? Because everybody is creating more information and more documents.
Yeah, that's the struggle we're running into is we've just got stuff everywhere. But being able to get it to where it's the source of truth without creating such, so many additional resources dedicated to making sure that it's always the source of truth. But how do we get a really integrated process to where it's one place rather than many places? So thank you.
If it's helpful at all, we had to put a fence around what we called the summit, which is our knowledge base. And we slowly started to migrate things into that space and said, this is our source of truth, because there are things that are still outside of that fence line that still exist in the organization that people reference. And when we find them, we figure out how do we get rid of those things that are outside the fence and put those things inside of this bound system that allows us to actually govern that particular place.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Kirk?
Hi there. My question is around kind of a business process management concept. So I don't know if it's best in this session or maybe in the afternoon session, but I noticed you had your enterprise model that you had demonstrated, and it looked like it aligns quite heavily to APQC, their framework. We're going through a similar process of establishing our process models at a high level, those primary processes. And my role as a business architect kind of leads me down 2 potential paths. One of them is is that value stream concept, which I don't know if you meant value stream in the concept of a process value stream, or if you meant it in terms of more of an agile value stream from an IT perspective. But my question, now that I'm there, is do you have that concept of processes primarily in your organization at varying levels and various sub-processes, or do you really look at value streams in that traditional architectural sense?
You know, the answer is going to be yes. we are a very process-driven organization. So we have probably 600 processes in the organization that we manage, and those we kind of organically grew them over time. And now what we're finding is our cycle of learning has helped us identify that the places where we can learn are actually in the gaps between those processes, because we've not done a great job of these giant end-to-end processes. And so that's where we're going now. We're starting to put these processes together into end-to-end process maps. Within our value streams actually house quite a few processes. There's not one process for the entire value stream. We have a value stream funnel. So, how we manage kind of projects that would create value for our members into there, how we manage them throughout, who touches them throughout, and what the outcomes are. And the value streams manage the projects, the projects that need to be accomplished through the value streams to improve the outcomes, improve the results, improve our membership satisfaction. Tom, you might want to talk a little bit more about because you own one of those value streams.
What did you want me to? I was reading Devin's question in the chat, sorry, and thinking through that one. What did you want me to touch on?
Yeah, no, just what are our value streams? Our value streams house quite a few processes, but they have process owners. But the value streams are more about this intake and managing a project and managing the results, the outcomes.
Yeah. Yeah, we and this will maybe answer Devin's questions a little bit, especially from a BI perspective. We focus a lot more on really the end-to-end value stream maps instead of just individual processes. Yeah, so part of that project, we're not perfect at this, but ideally, as we bring on projects, typically projects should be launched due to analysis of your results from the BI team showing that your process isn't meeting some requirement, whether it's regulatory or customer or whatever. And then ideally we're, at 6 or 12 month intervals or whatever after the project is completed, we're constantly looking back and ensuring that project actually met the upfront and stated goals. Hopefully that answers the question just a little bit.
Yeah. And Kirk, you did recognize it as an APQC model. We did work closely with APQC when we were building out our knowledge management practice and our enterprise process map. So we did follow that particular organization's framework in order to help us move in the direction of becoming a more process-driven organization. In fact, one of our colleagues here, Sawyer Hamilton, will be speaking at the APQC conference about our knowledge management practice coming up in May. So do we want to take Devin's question, Tom? Do you have?
Yeah, I can try. There's a lot more. So how did you guys transform your enterprise process map into a Power BI dashboard? That really even predates our BI team. We had segmented all of our reporting by process category. That Excel dashboard, that very first one that I showed in the at the beginning of my presentation, we had one of those for each process category. And so that was relatively easy to keep up when business line leaders were updating them on their own. But what we found out is we started automating a lot of that reporting is taking the whole end-to-end value stream approach was much more useful. To give you an example, our 5.8 is our risk management. So we've got underwriting in basically every value stream. So it didn't make sense to do 5.8 process category reporting from really 3 or 4 different systems. What we do is look at our end-to-end consumer lending value stream and kind of build our reporting out that way, and then to build out our larger data sets, and then we report based on process category to make it a little bit easier to manage. And for question, and then over time it starts to require dedicated analysts to support and manage that. And then for number 2, the answer would be just, were you going to say something, Maura?
No, go ahead.
Okay. No, number 2, the answer is yes across the board. All requirements are considered when using the SIPOC tool. Definitely, I would say requirements would be the top 2 there. We gotta keep the regulators happy, or we're not going to be able to keep our customers happy. And then how do you capture your SIPOC analysis, inform the structure, data architecture? That would be an incredible question for Emily and Carrie later. We capture all of our SIPOC analysis in BlueWorks, which is great up front. That's such a good resource in for my analysts to be able to see what the requirements are up front and know where to find it and know, which process category it falls under. And then, like I said, our data architecture, the way we're building it out right now, kind of follows more of the end-to-end value stream than individual process categories. Definitely open to Devin if you want to let me know if I didn't capture anything there, if you want to type anything more in the comments. You bet.
Any additional questions?
I'm gonna ask the big question related to my previous question, and I've been having an offline discussion with somebody in the group here about that, which has been very helpful. Thank you to that person. Here's the big question. Here's the big elephant in the room for us. We are a municipality of just under 20,000 people. We have an IT division of 2. We have an employee base of just under 200. There are 8 departments, 25 divisions. I don't know. If I had to guess, I'd say we probably have 50 different software platforms, running on a bevy of servers, mostly a Microsoft based infrastructure, but we use Google Workplace for our email, offline cloud storage, and collaboration. What would everybody have to say about how an organization that is based on fixed tax revenue and a limited amount of self-generated revenue that cannot be agile in the marketplace compared to, say, a credit union, for generating revenue to be able to afford the additional staffing that it might take to be able to build this type of data infrastructure to be able to put these kinds of things in place? And I know that is a huge question, and I'm not expecting magic answers. I needed to hear myself say that.
I think you even talked about how when we started capturing some of the data, we had one dedicated BI analyst.
Yeah, and we have one person who's not IT, but is an admin coordinator who is doing some BI stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's us.
One thing that really helped us when we had that small of a staff for BI was how good we were with processes. It was a really good barrier that we could use when people would come looking for reporting to say, is this tied to a process? What's, show us your process documentation, show us your SIPOC.
Okay.
And I want to make sure I address your question. I was responding to somebody in the chat again, so I'm sorry.
That's okay.
If you want to try to restate, and I'll try to answer it better.
So, I mean, looking at your organization, you're obviously a very different organization than we are. And I'm not meaning in any way to say that we can't manage this, because there are other municipalities that have done it. But, and certainly we're going to talk with them as well. But we are an organization of 200 employees we're a municipality, just under 20,000 people. We have an IT staff of 2. And that has just only happened in the last year. We had an IT staff of 1 for the previous 9 years. We do have some Power BI going, thanks to a very capable admin coordinator. We're looking to expand that. But our problem is, in terms of expanding IT infrastructure, that is an undertaking, a financial undertaking. We are an organization that is reliant on fixed tax revenue and some revenue that we can generate, but it's not as if we're an actual actor in the market and can be really agile. I mean, we have a landfill that generates revenue, for example. We have water that generates some revenue, but there's only so many, you know, our population is not going to double in the next, 10 years. So that we can't expect that revenue to greatly increase or decrease, for that matter, across years. So being able to put the infrastructure in place, I just partially needed to hear myself say that out loud. And also just, any thoughts from the group? Are there other people out there who are municipalities watching right now that might, have some ideas how they're going to tackle it?
That is interesting. That was the biggest benefit, is we started small in Excel, and Power BI was pretty cost effective, but that our goal was, at least mine when I came on, you ultimately have to have someone kind of with the skill set to do that effectively, that understands those tools well.
Sure.
But that was always my goal, was to ideally set this up so it was invest the time up front, and then approach everything in a way that's really repeatable and automated as possible.
Okay.
So that was really the goal. Build out some sort of custom data set in whatever system you're pulling data out of, and then just set it in a spreadsheet, and then pull that data directly out of that spreadsheet. And as long as things are consistent, you can make it
Sure.
not a huge maintenance burden to update. But I think that a lot of people's experience probably matches what I walked through in the presentation, where at some point you've got to dedicate some level of resources to it. Once you get to a certain point.
You also talked a little bit about, we started small with almost everything, right? Like we're how many years? 13 years into our Baldridge journey, and
Sure.
building up, being process driven and being data driven for our decisions. And so it's only because of that 13-year experience that we've actually gotten to the point where we are today. And so identifying maybe what's critical to your organization that might create some efficiencies, or something else in the organization that adds value to the organization is consistently how we've grown and learned. And then now it's a pull, right? I mean, people come to you, Tom, with like, hey, I have this idea. I need this new dashboard. Wouldn't it be great if we had this data? And his team gets to figure out how to pull it. So I don't think we started in this place.
Yeah. How long, and I'm sorry, I won't take up anything more than that. How long did it take you to go from your Excel, and you may have been in the PowerPoint, but I've had some people coming in and out of the office as I'm watching this. How long did it take you to go from your Excel spreadsheets to a point where, maybe not exactly where you are now, but to where you were getting the momentum to get to where you are now? Like, at what point did you see that tip over point, where you were really seeing things pay off?
Probably right around 3 years. A lot of it too is culture change.
Yes.
So kind of what Maura talked about. I spent a lot of time early in my time here looking for work, please let me help you. Let me automate some spreadsheets for you, centralize some things. And there's going to be resistance. There's going to be people that are perfectly happy to manage from the gut. But then I think as others in the organization kind of start seeing the value of being data informed, those people, kind of the resistors, are just not going to last long. And that's kind of how the culture change happens. And then to Maura's point, I went from looking for work to like urgently needing to hire more help because I could not possibly keep up with everything. So
Begging for a
it was,
break.
yeah, it was about the 3-year mark. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. I
Great,
think
thanks.
I think I'm
Thanks,
gonna leave it
Glenn.
there. Yep. Thanks.
Carrie, you had your hand raised again.
Oh, thank you. One of the things I was thinking about, and this conversation is interesting, where we're going to IT measurements to knowledge, and I'm honing it back in on knowledge. I think I saw in an early application with y'all that you were using maybe a different knowledge management system. I don't know if everything was always embedded in SharePoint, but making that jump from a scalability to Office 365 and using SharePoint, is that thought process still working for you from a scalability? Because we're a smaller organization and we're looking at third parties that specialize in knowledge management systems versus developing those core competencies in SharePoint.
Yeah.
Can you kind of share your thoughts as far as kind of maybe where you're at today and any learnings that you had on the journey?
Yep, we are beating our heads against the ceiling of SharePoint right now. So we started in SharePoint. However, we moved from SharePoint 2010 to SharePoint Online, which gave us a little bit more of the functionality that we needed in order to be able to direct specific knowledge to the end users who needed them and allow the searchability that we needed. But we're beating our heads against a ceiling of its capability as a knowledge management platform, both from a governance standpoint and from an experience for the end user, right? When we went virtual because of COVID, it really it exacerbated the need for knowledge management to exist and for knowledge to be available at their fingertips in the flow of their work and in the bite-sized chunks that they needed. Well, SharePoint is still allowing us to do that, but it takes a lot of effort on the back end to make sure that the knowledge is right, to make sure that the end users are having the experience of finding their answers pretty quickly. And so we too are looking at what else is out there. What would help us solve our problems? Would it be an enterprise search tool? Would it be a knowledge experience platform? Would it be a learning experience platform? We really do have to figure that out in the next few years because where we are today, we've maximized the functionality.
You make me feel a lot better.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yep. We've been in SharePoint Online now only for about a year and a half, 2 years. It's not a long time in SharePoint Online, but we've designed it to its maximum extent.
Nice. Well, thank you.
Yep. Kirk.
Hi, me again. I had a question. At our credit union, we're in Canada, in Alberta, Canada, and we're kind of wrestling with a bit of a chicken and the egg problem in terms of knowledge management versus business process management versus, we don't have access necessarily to the Baldrige resources that you do in the United States, but we have kind of competitive examples. But in your credit union, did you feel like process management came first, or did this drive towards Baldrige come first, or knowledge management, or was it all just this convergence of great ideas at the same time, led by a really kind of passionate leader about these things? We're kind of curious about it because we're kind of in this middle ground right now where we're trying to push these ideas up and out and around as a business process management team, and we're not really sure kind of the best way to approach that, or how maybe you've started that journey. So we were curious about that.
You've been here longer.
I was going to say that even predates me. I wish Genevieve was on the call. She would nail that. I know, go back maybe like 14 years. The knowledge management that existed was like some binders in a branch that almost definitely never got updated and got out of date, and the tribal knowledge. So I do think it started, the real effort was put into the process management first and documenting the processes, I think, before we moved on to the real knowledge management.
And
Carrie
yeah.
might answer it in the afternoon, about how we kind of first implement. Oh, Carrie's right there. How we implemented review cycles and stuff like that early on. I don't know if you know that, Carrie.
It really did start with the BPM. BPM and knowledge management really, when we began, were hand in hand. It was all managed by the same team. So we would start with our process map, and then our process map drove the procedures. So you had a process map, and that told you your high-level activities, and then you based your procedure off of that process map. And we still do a lot of that. It's just getting bigger. But we really did start with that. Here's our process. Here are the high-level activities we have to do, and then we can drill into how do we do those activities? What clicks do we take? What, that sort of thing. Does that help? That's really where it started.
Yeah, I think that was my biggest question, because we're trying to drive this concept of becoming a process managed organization, because we're very much a traditionally managed, hierarchical, org structure based, siloed kind of organization. And we're 2,200 employees, 340,000 members, and we've kind of, I don't know if I'd say this to everybody, but I'm going to say it in this room. I think we've managed to succeed despite ourselves in some ways. So we're kind of looking to go to a more structured, managed approach. So we were curious about kind of that timeline from your perspective, because your successes and your frameworks that you followed are really kind of the way that we're talking right now at our leadership level, but they don't have that process knowledge yet to kind of meet their desires with the outcomes that they're trying to achieve yet. So I think that really helped. Thank you.
Awesome.
Great.
To answer Glenn's question in the chat, what do you use for project management platform to coordinate projects? Right now, we're kind of on two. The bulk of the organization uses ServiceNow. But before they brought that on, our BI team was using Microsoft DevOps, because it really just fit with the way we wanted to manage our code. And we didn't need a person to administer it. We could kind of do it on our own. So the BI team has been using Microsoft DevOps for about 3 or 4 years. And this year, the rest of the organization will be migrating off of ServiceNow onto Microsoft DevOps.
And we really are a process-driven organization. Even the way we intake projects, we have forms that people fill out. We have teams that review that, decide together which ones are going to go forward. Then we have the portfolio management that happens now in which is shifting into DevOps, that manages each of the projects and the whole portfolio that we're spending time on. We are really process-driven and data-driven in our decisions that we make. So it's just part of who we are.
And that's a part of why we're making that effort to all get on the same project management platform, especially as we have a really smart BI team. So that would be my number one tip for everyone, is hire really smart people. It's worked really well. But we're to the point where a lot of the times our BI team is solutioning things. So rather than trying to force people to think through, is this something that the BI team can do, or a Scrum team? Which Scrum team is it? We're trying to move towards one single intake where people can just come with a problem or a solution, and then those teams can kind of more easily talk through what the right solution is, and it'll be easy to just get that into the right backlog then for delivery. And then Jennifer asked if we can share the form we use for determining which projects move forward. on the BI team, ours is very, very short and simple, so I can share that. Carrie, I don't know if you guys are going to go into that in detail in the afternoon, or if you have a good way to share the form that you guys use.
Not in the BPM session. I don't know if Emily's gonna share that in her session. I can try to bring up Service Now and share what it looks like, but that's the only way I know how to access it.
Yeah, same. Carrie, if you want to bring it up, we can start talking a little bit about it, Jennifer, and we'd be happy to share what we can, but we designed a system of questions about impact it might have, resources needed for it, the impact it has to members, impact it has to our staff, technology and vendor issues, like where does it connect to from a, and so this project intake form is pretty long. This is our analytics request form. We have forms for pretty much every intake process, don't we?
Yeah, I'll hopefully Carrie's bringing up our other one, but this is the BI one we're using. I'm excited to kind of collapse this to use what the rest of the enterprise is using, so we can get some more useful information. But we try to keep it short and simple. Tell us what your problem is, which process categories is associated with which value stream. And this question here, it's an adaptive form. So based on whatever you select here, we're going to get the right type of information we need to kind of help prioritize it or ask the right questions when it comes in. So I can definitely share that via email if you'd like. And then Carrie, are you able to pull up the other form, or I'm going to try to track that down?
I'm working on it.
Okay.
I wasn't prepared to have that open, and since I'm a back-end user, it's taking me a few extra clicks to get to that point where you submit. So bear with me.
You're good.
No worries. Let me answer Ryan's typed in question here. To what level of the organization are the dashboards for processes being used? Process owners, functional managers, front-end staff. As we said, our processes are managed in BlueWorks Live. We're rethinking this right now. We had originally given everybody in the organization access to BlueWorks Live so that they could actually see and use and interact with the process maps that we've created. Now we have lots of process maps that are owned by their process owners. We use the functionality within BlueWorks Live to have stakeholders review and validate it. However, what we have found out is that most of the organization, they don't know what to do in BlueWorks Live. They don't know what to do within a process map, which is why we have procedures written and then chunked it down into even more bite-sized job aids to do specific things. So we're rethinking that now, and not many people go into BlueWorks Live except those process owners. Now they all have access to the summit, which is where we store our knowledge assets, and everybody in the organization has access and uses the Byte dashboards that Tom talked about. So while they're not using the process maps, they are going in on a daily basis. Leaders and individual contributors are going in on a daily basis to the dashboards that make most sense to them to address anything that's coming up in there, to see how they're doing against their goals, to see how they're doing against because we do error reporting and stuff like that in there, what things are going wrong in the process. They can identify, and leaders can actively coach their employees. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, from a reporting perspective, we got some pushback over the years from that. A lot of people, when we make all of our analytics that transparent to the whole organization, there was always some concern that we're making bad performance visible, or, kind of that stick approach. But that's where kind of, I think, just the culture and the way you approach your performance measurement system and through the operational rhythm. We're not here to shine a flashlight on any bad behavior. We just are pursuing excellence. And, if we find an issue, we're going to do everything we can to fix it, whether it's people, process, technology. And I think it's worked really well. I think we've kind of gotten over those concerns, and we're kind of using that new tech. We're just wrapping up our migration into using that cloud reporting portal. And we're hoping to do it in a way that kind of makes it clear, based on what level of the organization you're in, what reports are relevant to you, and kind of easier navigation to drill up and down. Because there's over 100. It's overwhelming when you're trying to serve. So we're trying to make that a little bit more useful to people.
All right, I've got the form in ServiceNow pulled up, so I'll go ahead and share that.
Thanks, Carrie.
Yeah, hopefully you can see my screen. So this is the front end of ServiceNow. This is the system that we use to manage all of our projects. This is the intake portion of it. The information that we're looking for at this point in time is, what the name of your project. What are we going to call it? Who's it being submitted by? What area of the organization? If there are key dates or deadlines or reasons for having this, we want a description about what are you looking to solve? What are you hoping to fix? Or what are we doing by implementing this? The functional area or department that it's impacting or that's requesting this, a project sponsor, so who's ultimately in charge of this, who's the decision maker, who's going to sort of take charge on this. We want to know who it's impacting, who's going to be impacted if we take this project on. What resources are we going to need? We're asking for all of that up front so that we can make the best decision from the get-go. Description of what the current problem is, what's the proposed solution if you know that. Hopefully, if you're going through our continuous improvement cycle, we'll talk about that later this afternoon, you know all of that information. Do you have success metrics? What are you going to monitor to tell you if this project is successful or not? I'm sure Tom has talked a lot about that already. Is the project budgeted? Do we have the finances secured to do this or not? Do we need to do an RFP? And then we're looking at, is there revenue potential for this? Are there efficiency opportunities with this project? Was the project planned, or did this sort of come out of left field? We want to know the number of members who would be directly benefited from this project. And then what is the benefit to those impacted members? Once you fill all of that out, it's going to come through to the BPM team, and the business analysts are all going to sit together and review everything that was provided and say, does this make sense? Or do we have more questions based on our knowledge of the organization? Once it goes through the BPM team, then it's going to get submitted to our pipeline disposition team, and that's going to be even more experts that are going to weigh in on this, primarily IT and compliance and risk, and they're going to say, is it beneficial to do this? And we're going to rank it. Is this something we need to assign to a team? What team is going to take it on? Hopefully that helped and it wasn't just overwhelming.
Thank you, Carrie.
It's a pretty cool system they've built. Based on those answers, it's going to give you some value scoring criteria. And then within that pipeline meeting, that's where they start getting into kind of estimating the size and the risk of the project. And it outputs a kind of an overall score for each project, which is really helpful to all the value stream product owners. So they kind of have a sense of how to mix in big and little projects and make sure we're working on the most valuable things.
We have like 5 more minutes. So if anybody has any additional questions, and we've tended now towards business process management. I just want to say again, we have some sessions this afternoon that you might be interested in coming into on specifically a deep dive in BPM. We also have a deep dive on innovation. So if you're interested in those cycles of learning and how you collect information on what could be improved and innovated, how you implement it in the organization, another deep dive this afternoon.
Thank you, Carrie, and thank you everybody for attending. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't think I know the answer to Lindsay's question if they're all being recorded.
I don't either, actually. I clicked on recording after we started because it didn't automatically, and I wasn't sure if we needed to record this or not. So
they are being recorded, from my understanding. I'm not sure the morning sessions were recorded, but all of the afternoon sessions will be, and then I believe we'll be sending that out or making it available for folks to access, because we get it. There's so many different things going on. We want to make sure you have access to all of it.
Thanks for jumping in and answering half of our questions, Carrie.
I know, thanks, Carrie.
I was really excited to hear you guys speak, so I'm glad my other session ended early.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Yeah, this is great. Thanks for all the questions.
Okay, so